you think that Israel has gone too far at times and needs to be walked back?
Well, if I may say so, most of the criticism in the Western media and from, let's say, many politicians is there's been too many innocent deaths in Gaza, and it's got to stop. Okay, that's broadly speaking the view. I always have a challenge to these people, which I simply say to them, fine, tell me how you would achieve the following. Let's say we're in New York. Let's say that New Jersey fires rockets for years. Let's say that for 18 years, the government there has used all money coming in to enrich themselves and to build a vast tunnel network in which they can store munitions.
And the Prime Minister of New York allows that money to get in.
And hostages and much more. And let's say that right next door to where you're living, this very densely well built up terrorist infrastructure invaded you, killed hundreds and hundreds of your people, took 250 more hostage.
This is so fucking dumb. Like, the analogy completely ignores the history of settler colonialism in Palestine and the fact that, you know, it was ethnically cleansed. You know, Israel periodically mows the lawn in its, you know, its operations in Gaza. Constructs illegal settlements in the West Bank, controls the amount of electricity and the amount of water, the amount of food that gets into Gaza. You know, none of this is playing into his analogy, which is weird. Yeah, it just completely ignores all of the other relevant context. It's just, oh, this place called Gaza just always existed in its current state. And just periodically fires rockets into Israel for no reason. Just because they hate Jews, right? Not because of, you know, decades of oppression, of occupation, of, periodically slaughtering innocent civilians, IDF soldiers, shooting kids in the head, shooting at people in wheelchairs, using white phosphorus on its population. Just going to completely ignore all of that stuff. Yeah, brilliant, Douglas Murray. Right, the Christopher Hitchens of our age.
Tell me how you would operate in that terrain to ensure that you kill or capture all the leaders of the people who did this and wipe out their ability to ever rule that entity again. And
you do it by carpet bombing them, apparently.
Secondly, how you get back 250 hostages. And I have yet to hear a critic of the Israeli government's actions give me a viable plan for how you would get back the hostages. And there are still several dozen hostages in captivity, some living.
Wow. If there's still hostages in Gaza, apparently Israel is not doing the correct things. That just contradicts his argument. Well, we can only do what Israel is doing, which is a genocide, in order to get the hostages back. Oh, but Douglas, we don't have all the hostages back. Oh, I gotta go to the dentist. Sorry, I'm busy.
And how you would punish and kill the people who did that. Because, just again...
Punish and kill the people who did it. Also, tens of thousands, if not possibly hundreds of thousands, of innocent civilians, children, women. Half of the population of Gaza is under, is 18 and under. Yeah, we need to kill all of them because they voted for Hamas in 2006 when they were, -1 or whatever.
If you extrapolate out the population of Israel, about 9 million, to a population the size of the United States, this was equivalent on October the 7th to some 44,000 Americans being killed in one day and another 10,000 Americans being taken hostage. And nobody from left or right, Democrat, Republican, or anyone else has been able to persuade me that if that happened in this country, we would not tear up the earth to get those hostages back.
Yeah. But is the, that,
Tear up the earth. We need to commit a genocide to get our hypothetical hostages back, I guess. What's so funny about this is that the IDF is one of the most technologically advanced militaries in the world. If they were so sophisticated, which they are, technologically, they could, kill all of the Hamas leaders and get the hostages back really easily. They're so high tech. Why can't they do that? Why do they have to carpet bomb, a 25 by 5 mile area in order to kill Hamas leaders and militants? That doesn't make any sense.
but do you think the objective of defeating Hamas, is that possible? Is that possible as a goal?
Well, it's very interesting. Again, there's a type of criticism of the actions of the Israeli government and armies since the 7th of October, which, by the way, I should have said, in terms of fighting a war in a heavily built-up civilian area.
Why is it heavily built? Why is Gaza so densely populated? He's just going to ignore all of the things, all of the relevant history, context, details that lead up to the present moment, that lead up to October 7th, which I condemn. I'm a brave person. I'm so brave that I will condemn the October 7th attacks. But I also condemn genocide, murdering, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of innocent civilians, which for some reason Douglas is incapable of doing, for some reason, because he's a genocidal freak. Okay.
Best analyses that we can get, because it's not easy, because everything, as you probably know, all of the death toll figures are the Gaza Health Ministry, which is Hamas. And I mean, the idea that Hamas has a health ministry is itself. But also, all the figures come from Hamas. But let's just concede, yes, a lot of people have been killed. But the best analyses of somebody like...
you just need to look at the satellite imagery. Like, we're just going to pretend that we're not killing lots of people by carpet bombing a super densely populated area?
Spencer at West Point, John Spencer, is that it's probably a ratio of something like 1 terrorist to 1 civilian. Now, losing 1 civilian for 1 terrorist is terrible.
Yeah, sure, of course you think that. First of all, that ratio, there's no way that's true. There's just no way. According to the Israeli army, they admit that civilians make up 80% of those killed in Gaza. And according to this website, Israel privately relies on Palestinian Health Ministry figures, while publicly dismissing the data as unreliable. But either way, they admit that 80% of the death toll is civilians, and that the ratio is not 1 to 1. It's 4.5 to 1, which again I think is an underestimate. It's probably much higher, but Douglas is just straight up lying when he says it's 1 to 1. It's not even close. It's not even close.
But it is infinitely better than any operation the British Army, the American Armed Forces, or others have been. Most of the operating procedure of other Western armies is roughly 3 to 4 civilians for every 1 target. It's high, but...
It's high. We just have to kill innocent people for bullshit wars. But, whatever. It's just what we do. Western powers, like the US, UK, whatever, they kill a lot of civilians. So it's good that Israel is only doing 1 to 1, which is a lie. yeah, that's my justification. Is that other, hegemonic powers kill lots of civilians, so Israel can do it. Yeah, brilliant argument.
The Israelis have massively outperformed our own past experience in Iraq, in Fallujah, and elsewhere, in slightly similar terrain. So just on that, it's very important to keep that in mind. As for the ideology, I have yet to be persuaded that there is something so extraordinary about Hamas as a force that their ideology can never be wiped out. We have seen many death cult ideologies in history.
The ones you mentioned.
The ones I
20th
mentioned.
century.
Well, let's just take one that, let's take Imperial Japan. The citizens of this country in states like this were told by many people in the 1940s there was nothing you could do. You could fight them.
He's talking about death cults. He's talking about death cults. Just so you know, Douglas, Israelis are brainwashed to think that Arabs are not human beings. This is well known. Look it up, guys. Israeli children think that Arabs are not human beings and they should be wiped out. And, obviously top leaders, prime ministers in Israel have spoken quite explicitly about wiping out the Palestinians.
These at some point, I hope these young people grow up, but they've got a heck of a shock because everybody that they have claimed to admire, apart from being rapists and murderers and sadists,
Is he describing the IDF?
are also now dead.
Is that...
So they can continue to parade with admiration for Sinwar and Nasrallah and all the rest, but they're all encountering their 72 virgins, which is
Yeah, like the the children. Yeah, the children are counting their 72 virgins. This guy is a freak. This guy is a genocidal freak. Oh my God. The fact that anybody takes this guy seriously. But I mean, I get it. There's still like a lot of people who support the state of Israel. And they need someone with a faux intellectual aesthetic and that, that sweet British accent to legitimize their bloodlust. But this guy is really dumb. And his analogy in the beginning of this video was just completely divorced from reality. It omitted all relevant historical context and pretends that, Gaza is this, autonomous zone that, that's not completely blocked off from the world and has its, resources controlled to the point where Israel talks about putting Gazans on a diet and limiting their caloric intake. But that's what they do. They have to omit super relevant facts to make their arguments work. But when you're just a little educated, their arguments completely fall apart. Anyway, guys, that's enough for me. I'm gonna go take a nap per usual. Love you guys. Bye bye.